Today's scripture reading comes from the book of John, chapter 10, verse 11 through 18. Hear now the word of God. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Who here is a dog or a cat person? Dog person? Great. Cat person? Okay. Oh, we have both. Interesting. So I prefer dogs because I grew up raising two dogs in my life. And we like to think and say that perhaps our preferences for either dogs and cats reveal something about someone. So we like to think cat persons are more perhaps individualistic, more sensitive, intuitive, and whereas dog persons, people who like dogs, are more extroverted, outgoing, and likes to do new fun stuff. But the most popular dog breeds today are not what they used to be, which means that it has changed over time. Today, most dogs are the little chihuahuas, the little, whatever, purse dogs, the dogs that fit in your purse. But back in Jesus' time, dogs were generally more working animals, which meant that they helped people hunt, people guard things, and perhaps even rescue people. And one of the most important jobs dogs had was herding. So we have the German Shepherd, the Australian Shepherd, the English Sheepdog, and the Border Collie. All these dogs, these breeds were bred so that they can help people herd their animals. And the interesting thing about dogs is that they were the first domesticated animal. And this domestication of dogs happened before humans settled down. And if you think about when humans settled down, it was 10,000 years ago, whereas the domestication of dogs happened 17,000 years before, which meant 7,000 years before farming. So dogs were a very important part of ancient people's life because they helped people herd their animals, guard their animals, and also provide protection. So most people today are unfamiliar with farming. I for one did not have to farm growing up. But I think we are more familiar with farming than animal husbandry. So animal husbandry is basically the farming of animals. And I think the name is very bizarre, like husbandry. That sounds like something a husband would do in the house. But anyway, what I want to say here is that farming in general has been very removed from our modern lives today. So we don't have to farm to survive anymore. But it wasn't always like this. Farming was more or less something everyone had to do, especially in Jesus' time. So back 2,000 years ago, perhaps 2,024 years ago to be more exact, each house would have a farm, a little plot of land where they would have their own little farm. And if you're wealthy, you would have a bigger farm and servants who would farm for you. But if you're just a normal, peasant or a plebe, what you would do is your family would all be involved in the farming. And if you're very rich, your house will be in the city, there'll be no farms around it, and your farm will be outside of the city, very far away, where your own servants will be doing the farming and you don't have to think about farming in your life. So the ancient people, usually everyone farmed. And if you farmed, you also had farm animals. So you had probably some sheep, perhaps an oxen or a donkey or a horse. Excuse me. So if you had any number of animals, perhaps more than 5 to 10, that animal would have to go outside of your house to graze. And because farming in general was labor intensive, it took a lot of manpower and a lot of work, the responsibility of herding would fall upon either the youngest of the household, like we see in the Old Testament David, or a girl, a woman, as we see Rachel, who was a shepherdess. So farming was done by the older generations, the older family members, whereas the herding would generally be done by the youngest or the weakest of the family. And shepherding, was a very important part of ancient life because it provided insurance in case of a failure of farming. Because these herd animals like sheep, goats were very resilient to drought. So if your little farm didn't go well, like your animals outside of that area will probably survive, which meant that you had the means to survive that harvest failure. So in addition to providing insurance, these farm animals are also valuable because they are a source of meat, milk, wool, manure, leather, and they would also provide utilities by being a pack animal. And they were very important because they were a source of wealth. So if you see back in like the book of Job, you see his wealth being numbered with animals. Like he had 10,000 sheep, 5,000 goats, like 500 camels, and it seems very unfamiliar to us, but back in the day, that's how you would account for someone's wealth. So these animals were very valuable in that they provided a source of value on top of being just insurance to farming. And this importance is one of the reasons experts and historians attribute to the banning of pork, or pigs to be more exact. Because pigs, in comparison to sheep and goats and other animals, did not provide much value apart from their meat. So sheep will provide their wool, they'll be very useful for their leather. Sheep can be also useful for meat and for trade. So that's one of the reasons why experts think that Muslims, Jews don't eat pigs in the Middle East. And what all of this means is that more or less in the Middle East, each family had a pack of animals. So it could have been sheep, some goats, and this was very important to them. So everyone probably wanted some animal in their household. And what this meant was that if you had a number of animals, those animals could not just be fed within your house. They had to be taken outside of your house, outside of the farm. And these people, the shepherds, would live a semi-nomadic pastoral life. So while they had the main house in the city, or perhaps outside of the city, these shepherds would have to live outside of that house, wandering and finding new grazing places where the animals could feed themselves. And as we know, the Middle East has 2 seasons, the winter and summer. So when the seasons changed, it meant that the areas where the sheep could eat also changed. So they were always on the move, finding places to eat, finding places where the sheep could find food. So travel was always necessary. And it was a very constant and important part of a shepherd's life. And what shepherds would do when they traveled with these herds was not just provide guidance to finding green pastures, but also protection from wild animals and thieves. And we like to imagine just shepherds being a stoic figure providing guidance with their staff, but they were just more than a person who would provide protection. They had to live with the animals, and they had to be part of their life every day. In fact, shepherds were very important to the animals' well-being from their birth to death. I watched some documentaries on shepherds and what their life looked like, and they had to be very dedicated. They were with them all the time, providing comfort, and if they got tangled in some bushes, they would have to come free them. And if the shepherds were giving birth, if the sheep were giving birth, the shepherds would be midwives, helping provide protection, comfort, and help. And they would stay up all night with the sheep, trying to make sure that the baby comes out fine. And from that moment, the sheep is born, the shepherd takes care of both the sheep and the newborn. And the shepherd would know the sheep because they were with him at the moment of their birth. And this is the reason why the sheep will know the shepherd. John 10:14, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep knows me. If you are a good shepherd that takes care of a sheep, you will be there at the moment of their birth. And this is the first point that I want to make today. Jesus is the only good and true shepherd. No other thing can replace a true shepherd to a sheep. Even if you were to have 1,000 fake shepherds, they wouldn't be able to replace that one true shepherd that was with you from the moment of your birth, providing both protection, help, and comfort. 1,000 hired hands could never replace the true owner, the true shepherd of the sheep. And Jesus says here today that he is the good, and the true shepherd. And the reason a shepherd, the true shepherd, is better than 1,000 hired hand isn't just because he's there from the moment of his birth. The reason the true shepherd is good is because he loves his sheep, while the hired hands do not. The hired hand does not really care for the sheep. They do not really know the sheep. The true shepherd goes beyond himself to care for his sheep, while the hired hands only cares about himself. And this is because the life of a shepherd is a very difficult life. It's not easy to be a shepherd. Although it might not be as physically intensive as working on a farm, it is more than just physical work. It's both physically and mentally demanding, because you have to be there with the sheep all the time. Whereas if you're working on a farm, it's usually during the daylight from 9 to 5, or to be more accurate, you would probably be farming before the sun rises and then resting when the sun is high and working again when the sun is setting. So anybody can be a shepherd, but not everyone can be the good shepherd. And the difference between a good and a bad shepherd is this. The good shepherd places his sheep above himself, whereas the bad shepherd places himself above the sheep. The true owner of the sheep cares for his sheep because he owns them. It is a part of his inheritance, whereas the hired hand do not care. And this is the second point that I want to make today. The true shepherd is sacrificial, whereas the bad shepherd is selfish. It's very easy to not care for your sheep if you don't own them. All they have to do is just make sure that the sheep aren't killed or lost. As long as the numbers stay the same, they don't really care whether the sheep is starving, whether the sheep is stuck in some bush, whether they are highly stressed. The bad shepherd, all he has to do is just make sure that the number stays the same. Whereas the good shepherd really cares intimately about the sheep because he has been there with them at the moment of their birth. John 10, verse 12 to 13. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Could the sheep tell the difference between a good and a bad shepherd? I think the sheep will have a hard time because the sheep are usually not very smart. So they might think that the fake hired hand might be able to provide the same comfort, the same protection, and the same love as the real shepherd. In fact, if you look at them outwardly, they might look the same, they might speak the same, and they might carry themselves the same way. So it's very easy for the sheep to be confused about who is the true shepherd. And I think it's likewise in our life as well. There's lots of false shepherds in life, and we follow them because they make us feel safe, but they don't really protect us. They might give us a sense of confidence and perhaps even meaning. It gives pleasure, it gives joy to be with them. And they guide us and sometimes even replace the true shepherd and the only shepherd in our life. But there's so many fake shepherds in life, counterfeit gods, that takes place of the real one that will lead you astray. And when trouble comes, when the lion or the wolf comes, instead of protecting you, they'll be the first to run. And likewise in our life, when death comes knocking on our door, the price of sin that has to be paid, the price of death that is demanded, none of them will be able to pay that price. They are all useless, powerless in front of death. The Good Shepherd is sacrificial. He's willing to give up his own life for a sheep because he knows his sheep. He loves his sheep and he sincerely cares for the sheep. You cannot love something you do not know. You cannot appreciate someone whom you do not have a relationship with. All the hired hands, the fake shepherds, will not lay down your life for you because they do not love you. They do not know you. They are just using you to get what they want. If a hired hand was to even give up his life for the sheep, it would be called foolishness, recklessness. But if it was a true shepherd, the owner of the sheep, who would lay down his life, we would say that that shepherd is a good shepherd, fulfilling his love and duty. And one of the ways in which the good shepherd, the true shepherd, would protect his sheep in the wilderness was by creating a makeshift camp. So out in the wilderness, they didn't have a house or a sheep pen. So what they would do is gather wood, brush, or whatever thing they could find and make a little fence with a U. And at the entrance, because they didn't have a gate or a door, what they would do is they would lie down in front of the entrance of the U. So if a U is here, there are sheep here, the shepherd would lie down at the entrance. And what he would do by lying down is act as a gate. So if a sheep wanted to go out, the sheep would have to step over the shepherd and wake him up. And if a predator wanted to get in to get a sheep, he would have to go through the shepherd. In this way, he was laying down his life every day for a sheep. And this is the third and last point that I want to make today. The Good Shepherd is himself the gate to eternal life. Last week, Jesus declared that he was the gate. John 10, verse 9. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The only way he is the gate for the sheep is because he is the Good Shepherd who risks his life by laying down on the ground, willing to die for a sheep every day, so that the sheep can live. John 10, verse 15 and 17. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. The reason my Father loves me is because I lay down my life, only to take it up again. And the good news today is that Jesus is inviting everyone, every sheep, to the flock. Jesus proclaims in John 10, chapter 16, I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. So those sheep who are not part of his flock is also invited. And not just invited, they are actively sought out by Jesus. Jesus isn't just opening the gate of the sheep pen so that other sheep who are lost can go in. Jesus is going out in the wilderness to find that sheep who is lost, the sheep who's crying out, the sheep that is scared. And those who cry out for God, who cry out for Jesus, God will come for him, or her, and you. Any sheep that is lost but found by Jesus is invited into the sheep pen, regardless of the background, of the circumstances, of who you are, what you have done. If as long as you cry out to God, God will come. And God promises this. And we are all invited to be part of this flock. Everyone here today, invited into his loving care. And this is the amazing grace of God given to us through Jesus Christ. And no other person can do this, but only Jesus. As Jesus declares his authority as a shepherd in John 10, verse 18. No one takes it up from me, but I lay down according to my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. And this command I have received from my Father. Jesus himself has the authority to lay down his life and take it up again. He alone has the power over sin and death. And there is no other shepherd like him who's willing to come lay down your life for you. But not just lay it down, but also conquer sin and death for you. He's not just a shepherd here to guide us, but he is here to find those who are lost. And what we have to remember is that he came from heaven. He gave up the throne he had to come down to be here with us, to find those who are lost, those who are seeking him, those who are crying out for God, those in the jaws of death and sin, so that he can rescue us to be with him once again. Today we are in the season of Lent. Let us remind ourselves of the reason Jesus came, to find the lost sheep, to find me and you out in the wilderness, lost. Let us be reminded of his work, his ministry. Let us be reminded that he came as the light, the bread, the gate, and today as a shepherd. He came so that we may be found in God once again. So let us trust his call, listen to the shepherd, and obey. Let us come to Jesus right now. And as we sing the praise song still, let us let go of our resistance, everything that we're holding on to, and let our hearts, our minds, our soul be still as we listen to his call. And as we sing this song, let us reflect on the lyrics and let us know that God is king over our life, king over the oceans, the waves, the wind. And let us just know and trust God and be still. Let us sing still.